Well, good afternoon, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing super well. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to pick your brain and have you share with the audience. So Mike, you are the owner, founder of Computer Integrated Machining down in San Diego. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, even before you started the shop, and then a bit about the company. And let's start with just a snapshot of what your company looks like today, and then we'll go
Okay.
back and talk about the history of it.
We have probably gross revenue of close to 5 million.
Okay.
We had book sales of almost 8 million this year, so we're going into 2024
Congratulations.
pretty strong.
It's a nice
We're
backlog.
excited about that. We had a record year this 2023, so we're real excited about that. We've
Uh-huh.
been in business for 28 years. We
Okay.
specialize in the aerospace, high-end aerospace arena, and probably more so in exotic materials. We used to call titanium exotic, but I think that's become almost like the aluminum to us. So
Okay.
we do a lot with Invar, Kovar,
Hmm.
Hastelloys, Waspaloys, Monel.
Wow.
We used to have a little claim to fame. We fear no material, and you get somebody to call up and they kind of laugh and kind of breaks the ice. But that allowed us to get into a lot of exotics and kind of expand our footprint in the aerospace industry.
Yeah, and set yourself apart from many other shops too. Not that many specialize in those hard metals.
Yeah, and then the other thing I think we've really gotten into recently is the diversification of additive manufacturing,
Oh
and
wow. Okay.
that's an area where we're really trying to pinpoint, and then hopefully get our own additive machine and be able to do the whole complete, maybe the
Mm,
additive side, send out for hipping, come back into the machine, and ship a completed product that way.
got it.
So
So you're doing finished machining of 3D metal printed parts today.
we are, and
Got it.
and we're using outside sources that either have their own additive machine in house, or we set them up with another additive company in the intern. It's kind of
Got
like
it.
putting the cart in front of the donkey a little bit right now, and
Sure.
then switching it around, and we'll buy our own machine.
Yeah, I like it. So you started the company 28 years ago.
Yes, in my father's garage, we started the company with $2,500.
25. That's modest. I love the
Yeah,
stories of companies that start in garages, right?
yeah.
Some of the most successful ones have. And how did you? What was your background before that? Were you a machinist? How did you decide to start your shop?
Yeah, there was a program in California called ROP, Regional Occupation Program, and it was really good because school was really not my forte, and
Okay,
so I needed I'll say a blue collar skill, which turned out to be, machining, and then from that, I worked my way into programming, and I finally reached an apex where I couldn't do anything else, and I had. A company approached me that was building prototypes for a medical analyzer, and that kind of started the whole thing 28 years ago.
so they approached you and said, "Hey, would you make parts for us?"
Yeah,
Okay,
and so it was funny because I mean, one customer does not make a business,
sure, of
but that's how
course.
it started. And then I started going out and doing sales, and there was a company called Airline Interiors that we did work with, and we progressed with them over the last probably 26 years.
Oh wow.
And that opened up a lot of doors for Northrop Grumman, Lockheed, Boeing, and we pretty much got a list of who's who.
Yeah, I was just going
And
to say those are the names that
yeah,
many shops want to get into. So
yeah,
let's go
go ahead.
back to the early years then.
Sure.
What was your first machine?
It was a Bridgeport 5 mil. It was a CNC, but
Okay.
it was fairly archaic.
Okay, no problem. In your father's garage, and so you
Yeah,
started doing work for that medical company,
yeah.
and
I
uh,
mean,
and then from there, yeah. How? I mean, tell us if you would, kind of describe. And I know it's been many years now, the
sure.
journey from that to having the who's who, list of clients. Like, not every shop has achieved that. So,
Yeah.
love to hear how you did it.
Um, well, my brother and my dad would run the machine during the day. I'd go out and do sales. and I just started cold calling people. And I've got a big mouth, got the gift of gab, and so and I'm pretty persistent. And
Uh-huh.
we would look at projects, and then after a while, after we moved out of the garage into our first facility, we had our first Haas, and I think it was like 3 months later, we bought another Haas, and it just started growing from there pretty rapidly. And then we started realizing that people would come to us with problem children, and I started
Yeah.
realizing that was a niche market,
Hmm.
and we started specializing in that, and then that's how we came up with we fear no material, because I was getting introduced to materials that I was clueless about, so I had to
Mm.
do research, figure it out, bring specialists with different cutters in, and
Yeah.
so it worked out good, because even over time, ISCAR uses our shop in one of their hard to machine videos, and we have a pretty tight relationship with ISCAR.
Hmm.
So there's I would say, a very
Nice.
symbiotic relationship there.
Right. Wonderful. Um, and so this cold calling, you would just look up companies in the yellow page. This is obviously before the internet when you were starting to do this. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it was that, and then I would wind up talking to people, and somebody would say, "Hey, XYZ companies in Orange County." So I would amass maybe 3 or 4 companies in Orange County. And we're in San Diego. I drive up, get a hotel, try to talk to, it doesn't sound like very many, but you talk to like 2 companies in a day, depending on where they're at, and then the next day
hmm,
you talk to 2, and then I'd drive back down, and a lot of times I'd come back with blueprints, and then we'd turn our paperwork in, sign NDAs or whatever,
right.
and it just kind of kept on growing from there. And now we have a BD specialist out of Michigan, and
Okay.
he's got a team that works really good with us. In fact, we're flying out to Florida next week. We'll be out there for 3 days. We're meeting with a new aerospace company, and
Yeah.
so we get leads in different areas. We work with a high-end engineering firm here in San Diego, and there's guys I worked with like 10 years ago, and they've went on their own, and we did specialty projects for them. So they've got something complex, and they reach out to me. I haven't talked to them like in 6 or 7 years. They go, "Hey, remember we did that project XYZ? Well, hey, I got
Sure.
this new thing. I'm on my own." And so it kind of spiders out over time. And,
Hmm.
kind of the longer you're in business, you get references and business opportunities from all over the world, actually.
Yeah. Sure.
So,
So, what do you focus on to make sure that those people reach out to you again in many years, or they move companies and they're like, Mike's going to be one of my first phone calls, like customer service wise, what you're bringing to them.
yeah, I think like one of the things we offered was, let's say they had a model, and it's a new program, and let's say the whole model is done in pink. So we take the model, and we might say, okay, hey, this is going to be a hard area to do. What if maybe dog bone this? Any of the changes, like maybe some bigger radiuses or different things we might propose. Hey, can this be a through hole? It would be easier because you're not going to get the thread depth you need to get here. We make those changes and give it back to them. And
Hmm.
we do that for free, because I think it's human nature that if you do something for somebody, they want to reciprocate. And so
Right.
it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get that book of business, but I'd say 9 times out of 10, they put a good word in for you. They go, hey, we work with this company. We're not saying you have to go with them, but they help make your project more economical and more
Sure.
feasible to build. And
Got it.
I would say the payoff's been pretty big there, not just initially for getting that particular order, but also for building those relationships and have things land in your lap 5, 8, 10 years later.
Got it. That's nice. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I know when at our shop we would certainly have engineers or buyers move companies, and we had taken great care of them, at our shop and at their prior job. And when you focus on that customer support and customer service, yeah, it often multiplies out. And like you said, a reference that you didn't even know you had. Someone calls you out of the blue. You're like, yeah, I used to work with John at this and such company, or Mary, and just love how that sort of I don't know, community kind of builds,
Sure.
organically when
Yeah.
you're delivering great quality, great service, great communication over time.
I
Um,
would say, I just want
yeah,
to say one other thing. I
yeah,
think the communication is the key thing. And like I tell my people, we're just talking about this today. If you have a phone call, you follow it up with an email. It does two things. It protects the customer, it protects you. And there's a written path as to what happened, how you got from point A to point Z. So
hmm
I think the communication is super, super critical.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so uh, you so let's talk a little bit about, you specialize in aerospace and defense. I presume you mean sort of aero. I mean, we talked most recently at Aerodef and
Yeah.
Westech when we were sitting next to each other over dinner. Um, um, have you found those types of companies harder to get into, or have different kind of requirements? Obviously, they probably require AS9100 certification, but any other things you had to make sure you had in place in order to do work with
Um,
them?
that's a good question. We were ISO and we could see the direction that everything was going when AS was starting to come into play, and so we took a pretty early lead on that, which I think was has paid dividends. The other big thing we see right now is cybersecurity, the NIST 800 171, the CMMC 2.0. We're rich with the Pi. We work with an outside company called Avatar that does our internal testing or dual authentication. Um, that's coming down the pike fast here, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a critical thing, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in the markets that we deal with. We have to be proficient in that arena. And then I'd say for the future, the other two things we're looking at is getting NADCAP approved for inspection and for machining. I can see that.
NADCAP for inspection and machining. I've not heard of
And
NADCAP for
machining, no,
machining.
well, you're not. It's just a matter of time, from what
Oh,
I understand. Go ahead.
is that with the 3D printing specifically? Is that a
No.
special
Well,
process?
well, NADCAP is usually done for platers and painters and
Yeah, yeah,
outside
yeah.
processors, and
Welding and
that
things like
gets
that. Yeah.
right. But I see that we're the next marketplace to take grip of that, I think. And so I want to be ahead of that. So we're already having conversations with people on this. And
Right.
Boeing's brought it up at seminars. So if Boeing's
Okay.
talking about it, it's going to be coming down the pike.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
No kidding.
yeah, we want to be ahead of that curve. And I feel like
Sure.
we've done a pretty good job of being compliant with the cybersecurity arena. We're
Oh
still
yeah.
waiting for them to come out with the particulars on the certification for CMMC 2.0. And
Sure.
then we will be going down that road immediately.
Yeah. Well, sounds like being proactive and forward looking has always kind of been your MO. Is that fair to say?
I would like to say so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's helped us. I always tell my staff, I want to take all the excuses to say no off the table. If
Mm-hmm.
we have all the certs I mean, our shop is super clean. We're very organized.
Yeah.
We have nice processes in place. If you have all those things, somebody comes in, I mean, you're at the A level, at the upper echelon. Um, if they have work that they want done, you're going to be a candidate for them to approach.
I like that concept. Take all the reasons to say no off the table. Like
Yep.
remove the obstacles to becoming
Yeah.
a vendor, becoming a preferred source, become whatever. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah.
funny because we had Bell Helicopter coming in, and a guy came in. And I said, "Wow, you must see a lot of really nice shops." He goes, "You'd be amazed." I come in, he goes, and the shops look like hell. I'm like, I mean, our shop looks good anyways, but we knew he was coming. So if I have all my guys spend 15 minutes, I mean, we sparkle.
Right.
So I mean, and it's like, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, if you don't get
Sure.
work, it's just like, again, you don't know if that guy's going to jump ship. But he goes, "Hey, this shop was really clean. We should go talk to these guys." There's
Right.
there's there's no downside.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. So let's pivot and talk about team. How have you grown your team over the years? It's obviously hard to find skilled machinists these days. Um, Do you do in-house training? Do you hire people that are already experienced? Some of each. I'd love to hear your strategies.
Yeah, it's definitely both. I'll be honest with you. If I get really good service from a McDonald's employee, I might hand them a card and say, "Hey, if you're looking for a career, call me." Because if I see that enthusiasm in there, um, we have a saying: we would rather hire somebody that has a good aptitude and than has a crappy attitude.
Right.
Because the attitude, it's like a cancer. And the
Sure.
last thing we want to do is bring cancer into the organization. And
Absolutely.
if there's cancer, we try to curtail it or cut it out.
Hmm.
I mean, we don't have time for that.
Sure.
And I think we've amassed a really good team. Sky, my general manager, he is really focused on taking care of people and people oriented. And he's done a really, really good job of that, I feel.
What are
And
some of the things that he does to take care of people?
I think he tries to take the employees under his wing and try to teach them when there's teaching opportunities. The other thing we do as a group is we've done a bowling night. We're going to do axe throwing here soon. We haven't done that. We're going to get one of these portable trucks to come out and do that. But every
Fun.
month we have a luncheon, and
Yep.
everybody's for the most part it's hourly, but we do a luncheon. We take care of the clock in and clock out at a half an hour. So if the lunch goes an hour, if it goes an hour and a half, we don't care. We talk about if it's at a quarter break, we'll talk about where we're at for that quarter.
Hmm.
We'll talk about new business. Um, when we have stuff on the floor, the purchase, we have a book and it's divided into 5 sections. And the purchase
Okay.
order is inside the book. And some people would say, well, wow, your people know what things cost. You got to think about this. I mean, people are spending more waking hours in your facility than they are with their family during the week. And so they're your family. And I think it's important that somebody knows that they're working on a $10 part or a $10,000 part. Now, I want them to treat them equally, but are you going to spend a little bit more emphasis on a $10,000 part? I think the answer is yes.
Sure.
And not only that, the other thing that's changed is purchase orders have notes on them that the prints don't. So the whole landscape has changed. And I think it sends the wrong message if you're hiding. And somebody would say, well, that's really a dangerous thing to do. It's not a dangerous thing to do if you're taking care of your customer. If you're not taking care of your customer, then it's a dangerous thing to do. People say, well, haven't people stolen work from you? And I don't know, maybe they have, but I haven't seen it. We get repeat orders and when people
Hmm.
quit. So I just have to look at that if I'm taking care of my customers, they really have no reason to look somewhere else.
You mean your employees? You said
My
customers.
employees, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
take care of my employees, but
Absolutely.
but both things. You're taking care of
Yeah.
my
Sure. Of
customer
course.
via my employees.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it creates a symbiotic environment, and it's I even if I had one customer fall away, then we'd have to look at that and figure out what we had to do, and then do it better so that never happened again.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah. At our shop, we were pretty open book, so we would share financial information, and but I've heard of clients that will leave or shops that will even um, like hide the customer name. Like forget about how much the part is worth. They don't even know they don't want their employees to know which companies they're making parts for. I'm like, that's just a
It's too much
level of,
effort.
yeah, sure.
If anybody knows it, they go into a CAD model and they can see where it's generated, and people are
Sure.
smart, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
and then it just unfortunately it sends up a signal of not trusting,
Right.
and if you say you're going to trust somebody, we had a thing with our cell phones for a while. I go, look, the cell phone's a powerful tool. You guys need to be trusted. If you have a family situation, let your foreman know that, hey, hey, my wife's pregnant, she might have her kid, I might have to leave. Okay, communicate that. But
Sure.
so we sat down with everybody and said, look, be responsible, act like an adult, and it's a great tool if you want to look something up. And
Hmm.
so every now and then does somebody abuse it? Yes, but for the most part, I think the team's responsible, and I don't want to play the game of you can't use your cell phone. I'm just
Sure.
we're adults here,
Right.
so.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So you've been doing this 28 years now, right? 24, 28, you
Well, I've
said?
been doing it longer than that. I've been in business 28 years.
28. Okay.
Yeah, I've been doing this about 40 years. I've been doing it for a little while.
Okay.
So,
I'm curious to know, what is your succession plan?
that's a good question. We are looking at probably 3 to 5 year, and but if I sell, I want to sell to a company that can take care of my people and also give them an opportunity to grow. I don't think we're the kind of company that's going to sell to a mom and pop. I don't think they're going to have the money, number one. And if they had the money, I don't think they're going to have the growth opportunities that a larger firm
Hmm.
would have. And they're how do I want to say this? The interest seems to be in the hedge fund arena and
PE
other
firms,
bigger
kind of thing.
aerospace companies. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty lucky. I know a lot of people that have sold their companies, and I can take advice from. And so I find myself to be in a fairly fortunate position with having those conversations, if you will, right now,
Hmm.
because it takes about 3 to 5 years to get everything prepped, and we have a hit list of things that we're looking at
Mm.
to do that.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
And I'm candid, not with everybody, but with my C-level team. They're
Sure.
they're cognizant of this,
Sure.
but
That makes
it's not
sense.
something that they're afraid of, if you will.
Right. Sure. I mean, you've said just a number of, I think, insightful things. The 3 to 5 years to even prepare for sale. A lot of folks don't really have it on their radar that there's a lot of things they need to put in place to make their companies attractive for sale.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and the fact you even said, your C-suite team, you have that team, which is a critical part of that 3 to 5 year plan. If you have a shop that's run almost entirely by one or two people, and they're the ones that want to leave, it's hard for
Right,
anyone else to say, yeah, let me invest in that.
right.
But if you have a capable team that's running the place, and you can go on vacation for a week or two and not really have to worry about checking in too much, that's one of the boxes that's checked off pretty solidly, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just got back from Maui on the 31st. I was there for 8 days, so I've
There
got,
you
like I
go.
said, I've got a
Case
good,
in point.
yeah. So
Case in
yeah,
point.
so
And they
yeah,
weren't calling you
I,
twice, 2, 3 times a day, asking you what should they do about a situation.
I don't think I got one phone call. So yeah, they take care of a lot. I mean, I go to a lot of races and I race
Hmm.
Porsches on the side. So on a weekend, I'm gone Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I'm
Right.
gone 2 days a week, like 7 or 8 times a year. And then I'm pretty busy with travel. Like I say, I'll be in Florida, not next week, but the week after for 3 days.
Hmm.
And then I got to go to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Illinois this month too. So I'm
Wow.
I
Yeah.
travel a lot, and then when
Yeah.
I'm not doing that, I'm in Orange County or LA for the day. So
Sure. Sure.
I'm and I have another facility in Arizona, so I'm out there too. So I'm a busy guy.
Yeah. No kidding. Well, I think that's a good lesson and takeaway for people. You know, Being able to build the team so that you can be gone and people aren't calling you to ask you what should they do about something. Like if someone if someone is running a company and their team is constantly reaching out to them for feedback or advice on some aspect or a question or a problem, that's a good sign that they don't have enough of a team in place that is handling the day to day and even the one off issues that come up. That you know and whether a business is interested in selling or not, um, it's obviously far more sustainable and probably more enjoyable for the owner if they're not tethered to their cell phone in the company all the time, right?
This is true.
Yeah. So I love the fact that you're out there racing on the weekends and enjoying the fruits of your work while you have a team that's competently covering the bases and keeping customers happy, and that's something to really aspire to. So
I
pretty
agree.
awesome. Pretty awesome. um, So you mentioned how critical it is to hire for attitude. People just don't have time for people that don't have great attitudes. What about their experience level? Are you connecting with like community colleges, or are you just finding more experienced folks? Do you have your in-house training programs? Can you share a little bit about that?
Um, uh, we place ads with Indeed. We have a couple of
Okay.
headhunter, I call them headhunter organizations that we go through. I don't like to go through them, but sometimes we can wind up getting good candidates, so it works. The other method is the schools aren't as involved as they used to be. It's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really find the schools to be a good source, unfortunately. I'm
Mm.
not saying they
Okay.
aren't. We just haven't found that to be the case.
Sure.
Um, we have a young guy, I think he's been with us now 2 years, and he came in, put in the application, had no experience, and he just didn't want to be flipping burgers. And we have they say we have processes, so we have a stepping stones to get a guy from C level, which is the lower level, to an A level. And he now, after 2 years, he's at the bottom of B. But if you think about it, if you can get a guy who can indicate a vice, he can start setting tools, and then he can edge find and indicate. He's got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the basics. Then it gets down to being proofing, learning the sound, the smell, the sight, putting all that together. That's where the experience thing comes in,
Right.
and then trying to build on that. But if in the interim, if he can be doing the raw setup, the grunt work, if you will, and then one of my hiring guys can do something, get the thing tweaked and then put him back on
Right.
that machine. After a while, if he's got some downtime, then let him go through the finite process of testing it to make sure everything's good,
Got it.
and get that's something that somebody has 5, 10, 15, 20 years experience, start feeding that person. And we try to do that like right away. We don't wait just 2 years.
Sure.
And I don't think there's any hard path, if you will. It's just kind of a random thing that just happens over time. And
Right.
you have some guys that pick up faster, so you feed them with a bigger fork. you
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
but that particular young man, he's got a great attitude, and we've had women in here too.
Sure. Absolutely.
Our production managers. She came from another shop as a machinist, and then she worked her way into inspection, and now she's our production manager. So we try to hire within and move up within when we can.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned a process for moving from from a C to an A. How do you have pretty well documented processes throughout the whole company? And how do you
For,
approach that? Yeah.
yeah, if like with our shipping and receiving, I mean, we call them WI, we call them work instructions. We don't call them procedures, but
Okay.
they're SOPs or procedures, just different name.
Yep.
And so we have zones, and we have like the 100 zone might be the front desk, and that's kind of how you answer the phone. It might sound basic. How we put the books together, because Gigi puts the books together. How she breaks down the books. There's a process for that, because we retain all our information basically infinitely on the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a process for that. And so again, if you think about it, let's say I get hit by a bus tomorrow. A lot of these processes are already in place, and people know them. We're going to hire for somebody new. They can be taught those processes. And then we have people go through the process too and go, hey, this isn't what we do. Okay, well then let's fix it and change it.
Right.
And so when you get new blood in, it's kind of a good thing, because some people kind of overlook things, or they forget to put a step in there. So
Yeah.
it's an evolving document that I don't think is ever quite complete, and that's okay. And then maybe you bring new software in too that changes the landscape. So then you have
Sure.
to go back and do that. So, but we because I would say probably over the last 5 to 7 years, we've really done a lot of making physical processes, writing them down. They kind of got jumbled up. We had like maybe a 97, and we had a 45 and a 128. And so we went and sat down and made, like, there's a 100, there's a 200 might be machining, 300 might be inspection, 400 shipping and receiving. There's more than that in there. I think
So
we have
those are
nine
those are the
sectors.
zones you're referring to.
Yes, and so
Okay,
now we're doing, if we're taking a 43, should be in the 200s, we're renaming it. But
got
it's
it.
a pretty arduous process because then there's forms that go along. You have to make sure those forms are tied. So it's something that one of my employees, Emily, she's been working on for, God, probably all last year off and on. And we'll probably take to the end of this year to get it where it's finite. But then when we
Got
come
it.
up with a new document, we know where it goes. But if you think about it too, when you have an audit, if an auditor comes in, they see that level of organization, they're just going to look at a few things and they're going to go, hey, these guys got it going on. And they don't have to waste time. We can usually go through an AS 9100 audit in about a day and about anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. So we're talking 10 to 12 hours, which saves us money because we're more efficient and it helps the auditor get through the audit.
I love it. And those are documented in just Word documents or some database or how? Yeah.
They are Word documents. It is in a
Okay.
database and it's saved on the cloud. So everything is all very, very structured. We had an
Nice.
auditor come in. We had a problem looking for something. It took us 15 minutes to find it. He goes, if it takes you more than 10 minutes to find it, you don't have it. So we thought, okay, that was a problem. So we redirected some of our stuff and got things tightened up. And so it was a good comment. And as far as I was concerned, he was right.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's good. And so you feel like that because I know in some shops there's the debate of just do the thing or spend the time to document doing the thing, right? And clearly you've fallen on the side of document your processes.
Right.
Um, what would you say to someone that today doesn't believe that having as well documented processes is just easier? It's too much work to do that. Like, what would you say to
Well,
someone like that?
I think when they go to sell, if they're looking at a savvy buyer, and let's say my company's for sale, I have everything documented, and they look at their company, even if their EBITDA is higher, if things aren't documented, they might walk away from that. So I
Hmm.
mean, and not only that, it becomes a fairer way to let your employees know what their position is versus okay, Monday it's this, Tuesday it's that, Wednesday it's this. It's like there's
Mm,
where's the realm of my job? Is it
right.
here? That's not what I signed up for,
Sure.
and it's not fair to the employee, and it's a hard way to gauge. Um, uh, um, that's what I'm looking for compensation.
Sure.
And then here's the other problem. I mean, you can overcompensate. And the person's only doing this much, but you're compensating them this much, or vice
Hmm.
versa. It's usually the other way around.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, we have levels of C, B, and A. So when you reach at the top of C, do they know this? Can we test them? Yeah, they're there. Okay, now they move into the bottom of B. And where's the pay range? It's 15 to 20. From here, it's 20 to 25. From here, it's 25 to 35 or whatever it is.
Hmm. Right.
So and then we have A, but we also have like A that's like A/engineer. I've got
Mm,
2 or 3 guys on my floor that fall in that range, and those guys they make good money,
right.
you know, and but they're super valuable people too.
Right.
So they not only can they train, but if I'm bringing in a $20,000 part, and we've had parts that are $50,000.
Whoa.
Somebody's got to know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah. No kidding. I want to scrap one of those.
No.
So your job descriptions are tied in with the work instructions in the zones, kind of in a way.
Um, well, yes and no. I mean, they are because they pertain to what you're doing. Um, I guess yes would be the answer
Hmm.
because there's definitely that correlation. Because
Right.
if you know that you're at a C level and you're the guy who's indicating the vice, setting the tools, you know how to do that. You can set to 0, and that might be your stop point. And then you
Hmm.
go to the next machine, you can do that, and then somebody else comes in and takes over. And
Right.
eventually, we try to get some cross training, so we move you into a solid B, and then it gets to be, hey, now you can start at the bottom of A, where maybe you can work on a $5,000 or $6,000 part, and we feel confident that you mastered these steps to get there.
Nice. Well, I'd love to see that. That is super interesting, and I'm sure people will have some takeaways from that. Just And quite honestly, our own shop had a very similar concept.
Yeah.
And we had job descriptions with specific training requirements, and those were tied to specific tasks or work instructions, from everything from how to dial in a vise to how to order materials to how to do a contract review. I mean, it just spans the whole gamut of things that need to be done. But my guess is that it's not a coincidence that you can leave on vacation for 8 days without a single phone call, because you have a team that knows the processes that they need to do to handle the business, right? Now,
Yeah.
whether or not every single scenario has been documented, probably not, but at
No,
least
no.
directionally, and you've clearly also, it feels like, empowered them enough to make decisions that maybe aren't in the work instruction, right? To troubleshoot, to come up with their own solutions for things that are kind of out of left field, without having to
Yeah.
call, hey, what does Mike say we have to do in this situation?
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, and that's how I've got my my A+ guys, my three guys I would consider A+ to that level.
Right.
Is I mean, look, if there's something serious and we got to get on the phone, we'll have a chat, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll put my 2 cents in, but I'll also listen. Somebody else has a better idea. God bless them. Let's go down that road. And if we fail, we fail. I mean, the failure isn't such a bad thing. People freak out about, oh, I failed. Good, you failed. Did you learn something from it? Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't learn anything from it, that's a problem. But if you learn
Sure.
something from it, do I want to buy another $3,000 piece of material for a $5 or $10, $15,000 part? No. Have I done it?
Sure.
Yes. Is it going to happen again? Yes.
Right.
Is
Sure.
anybody going to get fired over it? No. You
Right.
know.
Sure.
So
Yeah. That's good. That's very good. So what kind of metrics do you track that your C-suite team is shooting
yeah,
for all the time?
I think that's a good question because I'm in Vistage. I don't know if it's like a CEO group. And
Yes. Yeah. Heard of it.
okay, so Vistage. I had a guy in there as a chiropractor, and he brought this chart, and he had like 30 KPIs. I'm looking at this thing. I'm just like, and he was the only guy charting. I'm like, God, what do you have time to run your business if you're charting 30 things? And are you charting what's important?
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we chart about 13 items. And
Okay.
I'm not in the meetings anymore. I was. I'm the visionary, so I'm not the
Mm-hmm.
integrator. And there are KPIs, financial KPIs. There's delivery KPIs. There's quality KPIs. Um, I'm sure I'm forgetting. Oh, there's even like runtime on the machine KPIs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
so I can tell you what our deliveries are, and at the end of the month, I can tell you why and where we missed. It gets to the 80/20 rule. And unfortunately, it's about 80% of the time, it's our outside processes that are affecting why we didn't live. Let's say we were short by $100,000. I will say most of the time it's between $70,000 and $80,000 was outside players that didn't perform, and the other 30 or 20,000 is stuff where we started too late or we screwed up and we didn't perform. So
Right.
we're not without fault,
Sure.
but it used to be the other way around, and it slowly transitioned. So
Mm.
I'll go off on a tangent a little bit. Probably last year I visited 24 of our vendors, some of them twice,
Wow.
just because every part we do gets touched by outside hands. And you can
Sure.
say, well, what about the parts you don't? Well, the parts that don't, the other ones get touched twice. So every part
Sure.
gets touched by an outside source. So
Sure.
you have to have that relationship. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a slow learner sometime. I feel like I've done a really good job with the customers. And probably in the last 2 years, we've really strengthened that vendor relationship
Mm.
that was kind of weak, if you will. And that's one thing I would encourage other shops to really pay attention. Make sure they know who your face is. If you got to call up and say, "Hey, I need this tomorrow," and you're going to get an expedite fee, if they know who you are and you have a relationship, before the people call, you might be the guy that gets what you need.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that is such good advice, especially these days. I'm not making parts anymore, but I just hear the stories of how overburdened all these processing shops are, and just how they struggle, and it's such a tent pole in the ability to deliver on time. So yeah, that's do you do anything particular? Do you bring them lunch? Do you just try to just be a friendly face and say hello and shake a
No, if
hand?
I think that's a good question. If we're meeting in the morning, I'll say, hey, you guys drink Starbucks? I'll go get some coffee. I want to be their buddy. You
Right.
know, I want to be their friend. I want them to know, you see this mug? He's serious. But, I've had people tell me, hey, here's your contact. It's Bob. But if Bob can't get it done, somebody up the food chain says, hey, I'm Bill. Here's my card. You can't get a hold of Bob. You call me. And there's been a couple of times I said, hey, don't like to make this call. I got a situation. Can you help me out?
Right.
And I'll say 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty damn successful.
Right.
And again, when I do something like that, I try to also bring my production manager. Let's say they're hitting a roadblock. For me just to get on the phone and take care of it. Now I take the empowerment away from my person. So what I try to do is make that phone call with them and say, hey, I got Erica here. I know she's been talking to Bob. We haven't really got anywhere. Hey, Bill, you told me to give you a call if you had a problem. And say, hey, Erica's my production manager. I don't like making these calls. What can you do to help me? And in the future, I want to introduce you to Erica. Can she take over? I pulled myself out of that position. That's not what I want to do. Then I got to make calls from when I'm in vacation in Hawaii. That's not where I want to be. So there's a process there that it took me a while to learn because I wanted to fix everything. Because when you start the company, you wear all these hats.
Yeah,
and after a while, it's hard to shed those hats, but you find out that you need to shed the hats. So
that is solid advice. Both, just the relationship building and then including your team, so you don't have to do that next time, right? To have that connection, that personal call, the personal connection. Have you have your production manager or someone else go visit vendors to make a direct personal contact with them?
I was just going to say, we had an issue with one of our big rocket companies, and the salesperson took the incentive and said, hey, we keep on having a problem. You guys have returned 200 of these pieces at various times. Half of them are getting approved. We're checking them. They're going through our inspection department. So we sat down with them. We said, hey, we want a copy of your CMM program. We have 2 different CMMs. We have Zeiss and Hexagon, so we can pretty much cover any type of programming. They have a Zeiss. We said, hey, give us your program. We sat down with them. I wasn't even in the meeting. My production manager and my salesperson went to that meeting. And it was just some little stupid things that we should have done when the initial thing happened. And we weren't trying to let it fester, but it's one of those things. But my salesperson took it on the incentive, and I said, when are you guys going up? Oh, we're doing that. Do you guys need me? No, you stay here. You're not going. We got this. They came back, and the other thing they did, which was really good, they sent an email back to the customer saying, hey, here's what we heard. Here's what we're going to do. The whole C-level team is copied on that, so we know what's going on. So if we say, hey, why are RMAs on our KPI up in June? Okay, well, here's why. What did we do about it? Here's what we did about it. That those RMAs in that arena, they should be a thing of the past.
Sure. And does that make it into your work instructions on, let's have this step?
Definitely, because there were some things that weren't being inspected. So our inspection part of our traveler had to be updated. There were some things with regards to bead blasting that they wanted done that was giving us fits, some copper parts, and the parts are swelling. And we were having a hard time controlling that. So we were able to go back to them and let them understand some where the grief was in the process, and got them to look at their process and say, we can probably get rid of that. And sometimes you're just not going to get that over the phone. You have to have that face to face. And real quick, I'll tell you another real quick story. We had a part that we got from a customer. We did the whole process. Everything went perfect. One part got up there. We somehow missed the rev on a print, and that part completely changed. I mean, like 180 degrees. And they called up and they go, wow, we screwed up. That was on their end. And they go, you guys screwed up too. Here's the PO. Here's the thing. Okay, we both screwed up. What can we do? We processed the part. We put Alex on a plane. She hand delivered that part a week later. Let me tell you something. That paid dividends. Earlier this year, we negotiated for a 2-year LTA that was worth over $1 million. And I shook hands with the main guy that made the decision maker on the steps.
Sure.
We received that purchase order in November. Now they're talking about a 10-year program that could carry on. And I think the impact of us, I mean, from here to Sacramento, was it 500-600 miles?
Mm-hmm.
And, all her job was to do is get on a plane, rent a car, drop that part off, shake some hands, get back on the plane, come back to San Diego all in one day.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any profit on that part was taken off the table. But if you look at
Sure.
the big picture, it got reapplied later on.
Yeah,
So.
Absolutely. Now, I love that emphasis on the long-term relationship, the owning your mistakes, going above and beyond to fix them. I did a blog maybe a year ago about, delivering bad news and how you handle difficult situations. And, it's like perfect case in point, of how to do it right. Because everyone's going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. How you respond to those and how your customer perceives your commitment to following through and, doing what's right in the end. That's where those long-term relationships are built.
Yeah. I think the whole thing of taking accountability, we had another situation where a guy was sitting in the meeting. He goes, your on time is like 30%. I mean, we were missing by a day. I mean, we're talking nothing, but a miss is a miss. He's I don't even know why I'm sitting in this meeting with you guys. And I think he expected me to throw a bunch of BS out. I said, you know what? I said, you're absolutely right. I said, granted, we only missed by a day. I go, but we missed. I go, we should have been better at communicating and telling you, hey, we need another 5 days or something, and tell you a week in advance, not the day before. I said, I totally agree with you. I said, if you want to get up and walk away, I don't blame you. And he didn't go. We wound up doing a lot more business with him. But our on time has improved drastically. But I think the thing that resonated with the man was that I didn't blow smoke up his dress. And I sat there and I said, you know what? If you're right, you're right. And it's not always easy to do that. So
yeah, for sure. Great stories. Awesome. I was going to say, one of the questions is, share one or two of your most memorable experiences of owning your shop. Can you think of just moments that made you really proud, or just, who knows what?
Oh God, there's a lot of them. I guess the most recent one would be when we opened up the Tempe, Arizona facility. That was a high risk, high reward situation. Because the first year, we were red, flat, black, back and forth. And about August of last year, the shop went full black, which was great. And that shop is going well. We have 2 machines there now. We have 2 employees. We're looking at adding 2 more CNC lathes there and another employee. So, and we're actually looking at going from 2,200 square feet to 6,000 square feet. And with the San Diego and that one will give us about 25,000 square feet.
Nice.
And Phoenix is, that all happened on a whim, how it happened. I'm not going to go into that, but we didn't realize how much growth is going on in Phoenix. Phoenix to me is almost like the next Los Angeles. There's a lot of stuff going out there. I think it was kind of dumb luck that we made the move there, but I think it's going to pay huge dividends in the next 3 to 5 years and beyond that.
Right. So was it, again, sort of that coming back to the, being forward looking, what did you have a particular client opportunity that being close by was going to be really critical? Or
no,
did you buy a shop?
No. We had an employee that worked for us, a really, really good lathe guy. And he grew up in Arizona. He was going back to Arizona for his family.
Oh.
And so I jokingly talked to my C-level team and I said, hey, we should probably open a shop in Arizona. No intention. And everybody jumped on me and said, that's a great idea. I was like, it is? So it was very serendipitous the way it occurred. Yeah. And so I had to go out to dinner with him and his girlfriend. And his girlfriend was the one who sold him on it, because He's a very, very competent machinist, but just a little gun shy about taking on, kind of a heavy responsibility.
Hmm.
And she basically told him he was going to do it. And she was an advocate on my court. But no, he's doing great now, and he's very happy. We're very happy with him. Um, I was out there maybe 4 times last year, and
Okay.
my intention is to go out there a little bit more this year, not because I really need to babysit Keith or anything, but just because I'm really going to concentrate on growing the Arizona market. My CFO here is basically taking over running San Diego. So my goal is
Mm,
to get Arizona up to snuff, and
right.
then for us to kind of merge together. I'll still be involved in some of the decisions in San Diego, of course, but
Right.
um, um, my CFO can take this on no problem, and me doing more business development in Arizona. That's the position I'm kind of taking next year, even though I am the CEO.
Sure. Sure. So do you feel like I'm, reading between the lines a little bit, although it's pretty obvious, you've always been a pretty sales driven CEO, right? From
Yes.
the
Yeah.
earliest,
Yeah.
from the early,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
said early days, you hired
Yeah.
your brother and your dad to run machines while you went out and did sales.
Right.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like that's been a key part of your success over the years? Is that really consistent emphasis on sales?
I do. I do. And I think just recently aligning with the right BD person or company, that's been huge. Right now we're courting the BD people in the maritime industry because we are, I would say, we're subspace, which I would call commercial aerospace, satellite, and then deep space, which might be Mars or the
Hmm.
moon.
Yep.
And so we deal in all three of those genres, and we're very successful. But in San Diego alone, maritime's like $1 billion a year industry, if not more. And we do, you know,
Is that
$100,000 or less.
is that like naval stuff? Going into
It
the
could be
Navy
naval, it
ships?
could be cruise ships, it
Okay.
could be fishing, the maritime, it could be submarine exploration. It's a pretty big window, actually, when you start looking at it.
Well,
And
hmm,
so it's kind of an untapped market for us. And it's it we've got a new company we're working with, and we seem to be very successful with them. And I'm trying to find out when the one guy that we've been getting a lot of business, when he's going to leave, because I want to try to recruit him. So I've already got a plan for him. And we've had some conversations, but in the interim, I don't know when that's going to happen. We need to find another BD group or individual that has strong ties to the maritime industry. And I think we could pull initially 1 million, and then in 3 or 5 years be pulling $5 to $10 million out of that market easily.
got it.
You know,
So for those that have not done working with a BD firm, can you describe a little bit about what they do and what that relationship is like?
well, hopefully
And
they understand what you
that stands for business
business
development.
development. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so yeah, it's important you know what the acronym stands for. Um, I think it's helpful if you're working with a business development group who is diversified. And by that, I mean, he's got a sheet metal shop, he might have a forming shop, he's got a machine shop, he might have a screw shop, but you don't want him having 4 machine shops because then every time he
Sure.
gets a quote, it goes out to 4. We're not the cheapest game in town, nor do I want to
Sure.
be. It's to me, if you're the cheapest game in town, you're racing to the bottom,
Yeah.
and I have no interest in racing to the bottom. So probably our biggest complaint is people say, "Wow, why are you guys so expensive?" Well, it's what we do,
Hmm.
and there's a cost associated with that. You walk into my shop. I mean, it's a capital-intensive business. We spent over $1 million on machinery last year. Somebody's got to pay for that. And
Sure.
somebody asked me, "What do I sell?" I said, "I sell time," and that's exactly what I sell. I sell time, and when I sell time on a pallet pull 5 axis, and when I sell on a vertical, they're two different animals.
Sure.
So I always hate it when a customer asks me, "Hey, what's your hourly rate?" I said, "What's the part look like? What's the machine it's going to go on? How fast do you need it?" If you want to answer all those questions, then I'll give you that answer to that. But if you're just
Sure.
going to throw out a generic question that's meaningless, I'm not going to answer it.
I like that.
It's a poor question on the surface. It really is.
Sure,
And so many
sure.
people get roped in. They think, oh, I got to answer that. 90% of the time, I will not answer that question because it's
Got
a
it.
poorly phrased question.
Yeah. I do want to ask about activity-based estimating, and it says not every shop is on board with the idea of having different rates for different types of machines or complexity of parts. But before we touch on that, so
Sure.
these BD firms, so they're basically outside sales reps that have their own firm with different shops, like you said, screw machine, sheet metal, molding, whatever. You're the machine shop
Yeah.
person that they rep. Um, they bring new opportunities that you then quote, and
Yes.
if they win, then they earn a commission on that for the life of the
Yes.
program, or for a year, or for the first order, or how does that work?
We have a staggered program, and I've had some people in the past where we did eternity, like a 5%. And the problem with that is you don't keep a salesperson hungry. If I'm
Sure,
your salesperson, the first year I start bringing you 1 million, then I bring you 2 million, I can go sit on an island and collect a paycheck with
sure.
new business opportunities. So we go from 5 to 4 to 3 to 0.
Okay,
And it goes from the first payday. So let's say we talk to the customer, but it takes a year to get the first order. I don't count that year transition. When
got it.
when business starts, that's the fair point. And so the first year we pay 5%, the next year we pay 4, and then we pay 3, and then after that I own the customer.
Nice.
So
Seems
and
pretty
like I
fair.
say, a lot of salespeople, they everybody wants to come. It seems like 5 to 4% seems to be what they want to come to the table. And I tell them, I said, well, I won't do that, but I explain to them why.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's been an appreciation and respect for where I'm coming from because it's a two-way street. It's a symbiotic relationship. And
Absolutely.
if it's one-sided to them, then it's not really a good deal for you. And you're buying that customer over time, and that's fine. And that's a payment plan. And then, but
Hmm.
at some point, there's a payday, and that customer becomes yours.
Right. Very good. Very good. So let us, if you would, entertain me for a second on this concept that you're quoting different rates for certain machines versus other machines, certain lead times versus other lead times. How sophisticated does your sort of estimating and quoting get to be very specific to the situation at hand?
Um, there's kind of like I think we have three different categories, almost like we do with machinists. We have like a base level part that might be on a vertical that sometimes might have some side holes or a side slot or something like that. That's
Hmm.
going to be like kind of a C level part, if you will.
Yep.
Then you get into a B level part, which might be the same thing, but it might be an exotic material. So the material could be a swinger on that
Mm,
particular decision to move it from a C to a B.
got it.
The other thing with this, with a B level, it might be a fourth axis part versus a
Yeah.
vertical part. And then when you get to a part, that becomes a part that would be an exotic material that has probably compound angles, compound holes, has more organic shapes where we have to
Hmm.
do coloring. And then if you go into something that maybe has all those factors, we might consider that like an A plus part. And
Okay.
then we, on those parts, we're going to sit down, we're going to look. Those parts get to be in the category of we don't want to do it, but we'll throw a price out that's so high that if we get it, it's going to be worth our while.
Sure.
And sometimes be careful what you quote because we've had some parts we've quoted 50, 80, $90,000. We're like, there's no way they're going to do this. And they come back, and they go, hey, we need two of those. And we're like, okay. And
Wow.
so we'll do that. It probably happens once a year.
Okay.
But that those type of parts get a lot of visibility because first thing, there's not a lot of shops can do them, number one. And if you can do that and be successful and be on time, you check off a lot of boxes.
Hmm.
And your name goes around the facility, kind of like wildfire, if you will.
Right. Yeah. Very
So,
cool. I love it. So as we look to kind of wrap up here, I'd love to sounds like you're, a pretty tech-driven company. So I'm sure your answers on how do you feel about technology adoption are going to be you're pretty pro technology. It's fair to say.
Very, very. I mean, look at the name, computer integrated machining. So it's
Sure.
computers integrated with machining. So yeah, that was kind of the thought process from day one. I've got quite a few young people. It's ironic because I'm kind of the neophyte of the group, but
Okay.
my people are very, very strong in their computer skills. Mine are probably the weakest of the whole company,
Okay.
but with that's fine. I don't need to be the best. I mean, I can surround myself with the people that are really, really savvy and understand that. And my team, sometimes if we're looking at something, I'm like, hey, why should we get this? Oh, X, Y, Z. All right, that makes sense. And hey, here's an article if you want to read it, which I probably don't. But
Right.
if I do, if I want to look at it, or if I see something, say, hey, I saw this. What do you guys think about this? Oh, that's great. Or hey, that's good. But you know what? We saw this is even better. So, I say there's probably about 5 or 6 people in my company that bring stuff to me, and when I have something, not necessarily shoot me down, but will kind of redirect me on something that I wasn't privy to, and then we say, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's move in that direction.
I like that. So do you feel like it sounds like you're fairly approachable, like people can question, challenge, suggest things all the time that
I,
you're
I
open
would
to?
like to think so. I mean, I walk the floor. Um, I talk to the guys. There's one guy that works with us. He was in prison for 10 years.
Hmm.
And so that's a guy who's, I think kind of looks at, somebody who owns a company as an authoritarian figure.
Hmm.
And I've got a good relationship with him. And every morning I see him, I wave at him. We talk, and, he's, I feel like we have luncheons. A lot of times he'll sit next to me. We talk. So yeah,
That's nice.
I try to be approachable. I mean, and sometimes when I think something's going on, I got my girls in my office, my sales team, and they'll be like, nope, that's not what's going on. They said that because you're the boss. I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of frustrating, but they have eyes and ears, and they hear things that I don't, and
Sure.
so they share that with me, and that's insightful. And I mean, it's I understand it's a little annoying to me. I'll be honest with you, because I do try to be approachable, but I think it's still like, oh, you're the boss. And it's like I told him, I said, look, I'm not your boss. You work for so and
Right.
so.
Right.
I'm not your boss.
I'm just a
I'm the boss of
shareholder.
maybe a couple people. Yeah. So,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. And to answer your question, I try to have open policy. My people, if they have a problem, I think, with me or something I said or did, or they want to input. Yeah, I try to be open to that.
Very nice.
I,
So,
I think that's also proven. Go ahead. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, please continue.
I was just going to say, I think that's proven by me putting the travelers out there with the purchase orders. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a sign of being open right there. I mean, and
absolutely.
that's tangible. I mean, you can
Hmm.
grab that and see it and read it, and the
Yeah,
customer's name's not blacked out either. So,
sure. Yeah, yeah. Um, so if you had to distill, and think back over the last 28 years, some of the sort of most strategic decisions you've made and moves, how would you describe that's led to the success you've had today?
um, I think when we finally decided to get into the fifth axis world, I think
Okay.
that was a big turning point for us, because I mean, even now we've got a new pallet machine coming on the floor this month, and it will be no time at all. That will be running 24/7. And we have two DMG Morsakis, and we have 3 Haases. One's set up for carbon fiber strictly.
Hmm.
We're getting rid of another one, so we'll have 4 5 axes, but one that's almost equal to 3 because we'll be running 24/7.
Sure.
And if that pans out, which we think it will, we'll be ordering another one of those June or July of this year, and we'll have 2 of those, and that's a 12 pallet system. And that's the other thing that I think is going to help us offset, because right now we just have one shift, and like you were talking about earlier,
Hmm.
finding personnel. Um, we're probably going to go in the robotic direction for our second and third shift, and maintain the first shift to feed those other two shifts.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. When did so I imagine you're putting parts on 5-axis that don't require 5, but it just simplifies your work holding and you can cut more features all at the same time, or are they truly parts that require 5-axis
Um,
simultaneous?
we try to only put 5-axis parts on because we have so many parts. If something can be done on a vertical, we try to. I mean, I've had, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 verticals.
Okay.
Well, I'm not counting the big machines. Like we have 2 big machines that have 12-foot by 4-foot tables.
Mm,
So if you count those, we've got 9, and we've got 3 CNC lathes. I think we're up to 20 machines total.
okay.
So we have our capability statement is pretty impressive.
Right. Okay. So you really reserve those multi spindles for parts that really need it, not just simplification of work holding and one piece
We
of work.
try to, and I think by the time we get our second 5-axis and we'll have 24 pallets, I think some of those other parts will migrate over and
Got it.
into that arena. And then, I mean, the goal would be to get, probably rid of, 2 more of the verticals and put another 5-axis with the pallet system, and they have 3 5-axis pallet systems. 36 pallets running around the clock. You're talking, right there is, in my opinion, is the equivalent of having 9 machines,
Yeah.
and your floor space is pretty low. If you can really groom your high-end operator to each one of those machines, they basically do the setup and get the thing running during the day, so it runs the equivalent of hopefully the other 2 shifts,
Hmm.
and run it that way.
Yeah. That's a recipe for a lot of throughput, a lot of revenue off of lesser
Both,
spindle. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome.
And I think the customers like to see that investment. We're working with a really big aerospace company right now, and they came on about 2 years ago, and I mean, and they're literally feeding us with a shovel, and they were really, really happy to hear the investments that we've got going on this year, and well, last year, and then breaking into this year.
Hmm.
And they've brought some heavy hitters out to talk to us. So
Right.
it's an exciting opportunity.
Yeah. So 2 last questions.
Sure.
One, what would you recommend that shops be doing today to ensure their success? And then what is your overall opinion about the precision machining market in North America in the next, 10, 20 years?
Um, One thing I would say, I would say document your processes. It's a pain in the ass. It's not an easy thing to do. That's why people don't do it. But it's beneficial to you as an owner. It's beneficial in a succession plan. Um, and it makes it makes it fair. The other thing too is it helps you place ads and helps you with your org chart. They all kind of tie in. It's like a circle of life, as we call it.
Right.
And because if you have your org chart that has, let's say, your 5 main positions, if you gauge your people by those 5 positions, by those 5 activities, I mean, there's more than that, but let's say your 5 main activities. And then when you go to hire, you can hire that way too. Then you're kind of assured that you're going to get that. So the whole documentation thing, it covers a lot of ground, a lot more ground than you think on the surface. Think, oh, I'm just doing it to document it. What am I going to get out of this? There, it's like an onion. It's a pretty deep layered animal, if you will.
Yeah. 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 I couldn't agree more. I think that's really good advice. And so for shops that are doing that and trying to set themselves up for success, do you feel like, because I'm getting differing opinions on this, the macro trend of precision machining in North America, do you feel like it's up or it's down over the next 10, 20 years?
Well, it's a good question. I think that if you're going to be here 20 years from now, I think you got to get into additive. I think if you're just a machine shop, I think you might have some issues.
Okay.
I think when the FAA finally opens up and allows parts to be grown, I think you're going to see a big transition in the landscape. That's just my prediction right now. And the rocket industry has totally embraced additive because they're not tied to the FAA, and the parts are fine. I mean, we've grown Inconel round 1.25 inch strips vertically, horizontally. We've hipped them, we've machined them and done pull tests. And we've had the pull test be within 1 to 10 pounds of a piece of material of Inconel. So that tells you
from a billet. Yeah.
From a billet, yes.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
so that's this reality statement, okay? So the technology is there. It's just when is the FAA going to be ready to embrace it? What I think is going to happen, I think you're going to see some of these older programs for parts that were casted, let's say F-16s, maybe F-18s, and eventually F-22s can become an old dog.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of already is starting to. But they're still flying these planes. When they get to a point where they have a hard time, they can't get a part cast, and you can grow a part, and then you can machine it. But I think if you can be inclusive and grow the part and machine it and plate it or paint it and deliver a finished product, I think that's a game changer. We have an assembly area, and there's a reason why we have an assembly area, because if, let's say, you and me are going up against, we're quoting each other, and the customer says, well, I want the part machined, I want it plated, I want it chem film, I want helicoils, I want pins put in. And you go, well, I can do all that, but I don't put helicoils in, I don't put pins in. I just removed you as competition off the table.
Absolutely.
So my competition pool gets smaller by people that say they won't or can't.
Right.
And then I have two things. I can charge what I need to charge for the part because I'm creating a service. I'm giving them something that's ready to plug and play, hopefully. And or they say, hey, Mike, you can do this, this, and this. Can you put the springs in the actuators, and can you build a part and test it or send it out and get it tested? Sure, I can. I'm going to charge 15% for every time I touch that part. They say, we don't care. You're going to deliver something that's ready to go. We can install on a jet or XYZ or whatever. Yep. That's value added is huge. Absolutely. And so I think the shops that are going to survive are going to be the shops that are compliant with cybersecurity. That's going to be a deal breaker with mom and pop shops.
Yep.
And the other thing is diversification. And I say diversification, I don't mean having a CNC lathe and a CNC mill and a 5-axis. I'm talking diversification in manufacturing. And that's a whole different level of diversification. And I think that's going to be paramount to the survivors. And, that's the company that I'm trying to build right now. So
awesome. That was a different answer than I was expecting, but it was better than I was expecting. So I love it. That's solid advice.
I talk about this all the time, so it's not like I can answer that right off the cuff because I've been having this conversation for the last 5 years. It's nothing new. I told my team, I said, look, we're subtractive. That's great. The subtractive's been around for 100 years. Even though additive's been around for a while, it's still fresh. And you got to align with companies that are doing that and work your way in and understand the process. It ain't going anywhere. It's going to grow, and the FAA will sign up for it sooner or later. And when they do, there's going to be a windfall of parts going in that category.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, one of my prior guests, Brad Kozlowski, who's also a NASCAR driver, he has a company called Kozlowski Advanced Manufacturing, KAM, and they do additive and subtractive both. They don't do parts that they don't start with printing. So they grow them and then they finish machine them, and they're definitely doing super well. So I think you're spot on with your advice. Yeah.
So I'm not following it yet. I'm following it in the sense I have somebody else in the growing, but we know we're going and we know we're going to go that direction. It takes a while, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Now, those machines are not cheap, and it's definitely a learning curve and just a whole different ballgame. So
it is.
Well, Mike, this has been really insightful. I know you've shared a ton of stories and ideas that people will take away and will help them in their businesses. So thank you so much for just being so open with us today and sharing your journey. I really appreciate it. This has been super fun.
I also want to say thank you. I mean, I know you come across a lot of technical, interesting people, and you chose me to come on the show. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. I have a lot of respect for what you do. It was great having dinner with you. I got to know you a lot better, and I felt like sorry, my ear thing's coming out. I felt like we had like a kind of an instant bond, and you're real easy to talk to. So I want to thank you too.
Well, thanks, Mike. yeah, from machine shops and race cars, we definitely have some things in common. So awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. And
Right.
yeah, we'll see you at a trade show or something nearby.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. Take
We'll
care.
talk to you later.
Bye bye.
Take it easy.